Hello?
Hi, this is Professor Chomsky.
Yeah, hi.
Hi there. I just wanted to interview you very quickly. We only have 15 minutes, so we have to talk fast, okay? Um, my point with this interview is that in order to make it through the pivotal period ahead, we need many public intellectuals at your level, like many sort of Noam Chomskys, right? And I just wonder, suppose someone wants to achieve what you've done in your political work, what does it take?
Nothing special. I don't have any particular talents. It's just hard work. Anybody can do it.
And how many hours do you read daily?
Well, I spend a lot of time during the day working. Uh, a lot of time I spend just answering mail. Maybe 5 or 6 hours a day. I read a good bit. But, nothing beyond what any person can decide to do if they want to.
And what's the breakdown for your reading between, newspapers, journals, and books? Like, how does it break down roughly?
Well, in the morning, eating breakfast, I read a couple of newspapers. I then turn to other work, whatever it may be. Usually in the evening, I set aside time to read the journals that are pouring in every day, books that I'm constantly in the middle of, and so on.
And it's important.
No set time. Yeah.
Okay. And it's important to read everything with a critical eye, right?
Certainly is. And also, I think it's important to read pretty broadly, not simply to keep to material that reinforces your own beliefs. It's useful to read across a pretty broad spectrum.
So do you read...
serious, if it's junk, no.
Right. So do you read, right-wing materials?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, I read... many of the journals are considered right-wing, National Interest, American Conservative, International Affairs. I mean, those are either mainstream or sort of center-right journals, some of them far-right journals. And if they're serious and important, sure, you can learn a lot from them.
And you're confident that you're confident that your views are correct after reading everything across the spectrum, right?
Oh, you could never be confident that your views are correct, even in the sciences. One thing you always have to do is keep an open mind and a questioning mind about the conclusions that you draw. And in fact, it's useful to look for disconfirming evidence and try to evaluate it. You live in the world, and in order to act, you have to act with a certain presumption of confidence. But in the back of your mind, you should keep open the possibility that the confidence is misplaced.
Thanks. And could you just list the newspapers that you read every day, like on a daily basis?
Well, I always, wherever I am, try to read the New York Times. I take a look at the Boston Globe. I look at the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, selected international press, or depending on what I happen to be looking at or thinking about at the moment, or working on, or looking for.
And these are the best newspapers in the world. You just have to read them with a critical eye to compensate for the...
Yeah, like the New York Times is the one newspaper that I would, wherever I am, say I'm in Europe or in Asia, I would try every day to pick up the international edition of the New York Times on the internet, if nowhere else. It's got plenty of flaws, but it also has more coverage than any single newspaper you can find.
So what are the journals that you read regularly?
God, there are too many to list. Quite a few. I mean, three or four come in every day.
So what would they be, though, like foreign affairs, or?
Foreign affairs, foreign policy, international affairs, the British Journal, The Nation, The New Republic, American Conservative, American Prospect, New Left Review, Z Magazine, on and on.
And then would you say mainly it's just books, though, like just books of all kinds that you read, right?
Yeah, the books, it depends what I'm thinking about and working on. I'm usually in the middle of half a dozen books on different topics.
Yeah, every time I see an interview with you on the internet, there's always a huge stack of books.
Yeah, and usually those are books I'd love to get to, but don't have time for.
And
I pick them up. I try to plunge in when I can. But there's no special techniques or methods. This is just, what you have to do if you try to keep your finger in many different areas.
Occasionally, you do cite pretty obscure sources. For example, I think you cited Proceedings, like the U.S. Navy Journal. That was probably something to do with the robo-cruiser. And I think you cited Jane's Defense Weekly with regard to Clinton's helicopter deal. But those aren't sources.
They're not obscure journals. Like Jane's Defense Weekly is, in fact, the major military journal. I mean, I don't read it regularly, but if I'm interested in some particular thing, then yes, I look it up.
But normally, if there's a fairly obscure source, or that one wouldn't be. But if there is, it's usually brought to your attention by some journalist, right?
Well, all kinds of ways. I mean, sometimes the scholarly literature cites things that suggest some direction in which you might look, and when you pursue it, you find something else. There's no real. There's no method that you can prescribe for research other than keeping your eyes open and working hard and pursuing things that seem as if they might be interesting. When you pursue them, you get to other sources, and they give you other sources. Ultimately, a lot of time it's a wild goose chase, but often you find important nuggets.
And you said once that there were churches in the Midwest that knew more about Central America than the CIA because they had really efficient information networks that allowed them to compensate. These networks can...
That was in the 1980s when there was a significant grassroots activist movement, a lot of it based in rural areas and churches and even evangelical churches, many others, which had maintained quite close contacts with events in Central America, including direct participation. People who went there and worked and solidarity work, often did other things. And there were networks of interaction and communication that provided quite a lot of information, in many respects much better than that the intelligence agencies would have at their disposal.
So these information networks can do way more than any one person could do, right? You could never do it on your own, right?
Oh, sure. A network of people magnifies enormously what you can achieve.
So do you have such a network that you rely on, or?
An informal network. There are people I communicate with who have shared interests doing research in similar areas. We, of course, communicate regularly, interchange ideas and suggestions, often critiques of one another's work, and so on. Yeah, that's the way to develop your own ideas and your own understanding.
Right. For example, like Charles Glass is someone you know, and sometimes he'll alert you to something important, right?
Right. He's a terrific journalist who's working mostly in the Middle East now and discovers all kinds of things. He's also a good scholar. He goes back to the history. So his books, his articles, our personal communication has been extremely valuable for me.
So you have lots of journalists you know like that who tell you about important things, right?
Yeah, and we kind of interchange. There are lots of people like that.
And I was just wondering, do you have any inspiring words for young people who want to be the next Noam Chomsky?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't have that aspiration. They should be the next person that they are, that they intend to be, that is right for them. There are plenty of people who do work that, in my view, is extremely valuable and probably a lot more important than what I do, but that don't write articles and give talks. Maybe that's the right thing for them to be. Or they should work in whatever area that excites their interest and imagination and appears to them to be significant
Do you think it would be? Would you be happy if there were a lot of young people who actually went on to, surpass your achievements?
I think the best. It's not only better, but essential, given the kinds of problems that lie ahead and the kinds of challenges for young people to become extensively and involved and dedicated in facing them.
Right. So even the best thing would be if one day there were so many good intellectuals that you were actually considered mediocre, right?
Well, not just intellectuals, activists of all kinds. I mean, I don't even know what intellectual means. I mean, there may be a person who never graduated high school who has deep insights and understanding about the nature of the world. In fact, I've known such people. They're usually not called intellectuals, but they're often more creative and insightful than people who are called intellectuals. So people should pursue their capabilities and interests actively and with an eye towards the great significance of direct engagement.
By intellectual, I just meant someone who writes and monitors the media and does research that kind of supports the activists.
I think that's a valuable thing to do, but there are many other things that are valuable, like organizing.
You did mention that there was a division of labor that happened a long time ago when you realized that you weren't so good at organizing, but you were better at, doing the academic work, not academic, but the research.
It was a kind of a natural division of labor. Many of my close friends went in other directions, and I think what they do is enormously important.
Right. All I meant was that someone on your side of the division of labor, that's just all I meant by public intellectual, someone who...
I mean, they may decide not to be public intellectuals, but to be activist organizers. And they're doing the crucial work, in fact, grassroots organizing.
Okay, and lastly, I just had one final question. I wanted to ask you about what you think about the Arctic permafrost. I don't know if you followed the climate science, but apparently there's a huge problem with the melting permafrost.
The permafrost?
Yeah, it could release mass...
Melting of the permafrost?
Yeah.
That's enormously dangerous. And it could lead to an irreversible and sharply escalating cycle. I mean, not only the Arctic, but in Siberia, as the ice cover melts, the permafrost will be exposed to melting. That's huge amounts of fossil fuels incorporated there. If that gets into the atmosphere, it might have a sharply escalating effect, which will be irreversible.
Yeah, there are scientists monitoring all of this, and they're extremely alarmed about it, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they have every reason to be. Arctic ice is receding very quickly, and the same's happening in Siberia and elsewhere. And Arctic, too.
And it's not clear whether the gas will be released as CO2 or methane, and if it's methane, it'll be 60 to 70 times worse.
It's not clear, but the dangers are very severe.
And what do you think can be done about this before it's too late?
Yeah, a lot can be done. We have to get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible and create sustainable energy sources. And that means a lot of social reconstruction, rebuilding cities, lots of things. And it has to be done fast.
And it has to be done with fee and dividend policy, right? Do you know what that is?
With what?
Fee and dividend. You tax the carbon, and it goes into a pool, and then you send it back out to the...
That's one thing that ought to be tried. How successful it can be, we don't know. But that's one of many directions that can be taken.
But if it's not done, the market will go with the cheapest energy supply, and wind and solar won't have a chance.
We can't rely on the market, or we're doomed. It's going to require policy decisions.
Right. So it requires some kind of carbon tax to tilt the market differently, right?
It will require policy decisions which will shape and probably marginalize market forces.
Okay, and also, I just wanted to know what the situation is regarding the other threat, the nuclear situation. Is the U.S. still blocked? Is the U.S. still
dangerous? The U.S. I'm sorry, I have to leave. But just to finish, the nuclear. There's a constant threat of nuclear war, even by accident, and there's plenty of tensions in the world which could lead it to blow up. If that happens, it's the end. so we can stop talking about everything else. That can be stopped. We can eliminate nuclear weapons. The environmental crisis, maybe we can deal with, maybe not. But in the case of nuclear weapons, we know how to proceed.
And the U.S. is blocked.
Quickly.
The U.S. is blocking the nuclear weapons-free zones,
It's
right?
not just the U.S., the nuclear states altogether.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yep. Right. Talk to you again.